Billionaire CEO's autistic son was screaming in the restaurant. Black waitress did the unthinkable. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a busy evening at one of the finest restaurants in downtown New York, a place where every table was filled with the elite, the movers, and the shakers. The lights were dimmed just enough to give the atmosphere an air of sophistication, while soft jazz played in the background, making the whole space feel like a set for a movie. But that night, this elegant restaurant would become the stage for something no one could have predicted. At the heart of it all sat CEO Thomas Aldrich, the head of Aldrich Technologies, one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the tech world. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his presence commanded attention. His business was thriving, his empire expanding, and his reputation preceded him wherever he went. But on this particular evening, there was something in the air that even his wealth and power couldn't control. His son, Jamie, a young boy with autism, was having a meltdown. Jamie's screams echoed through the restaurant, piercing the otherwise serene ambience. His hands were clenched in fists, his body shaking, as he struggled to communicate his distress. The guests at nearby tables exchanged uncomfortable glances, and the servers moved hurriedly, trying to ignore the rising tension. Thomas sat there, his face reddening with frustration. He had tried everything to calm Jamie, holding him, speaking softly, offering him his favorite toy, but nothing worked. The more he tried, the louder Jamie screamed. And with each passing second, the discomfort in the room grew. Everyone could feel the pressure mounting, but no one dared to intervene. No one except the waitress. Cassandra was just another server in the sea of staff members, trying to make a living, trying to make ends meet. A single mother with a daughter at home, she had learned how to survive in this world of privilege and power. She had seen it all, the dismissive glances, the subtle slights, the way people like Thomas Aldrich never truly saw the people serving them. But that night, Cassandra wasn't going to just stand by. She had worked with children, she knew how to soothe them, how to be patient and understanding. And so, she approached Jamie's table, her heart racing, but her steps steady. The room fell silent as Cassandra knelt beside the boy. Without a word, she gently placed her hand on his arm, looking him in the eye. The others watched in disbelief as Cassandra began to hum softly, a lullaby she had learned from her own mother years ago. The sound was low and soothing, filling the space between the chaos and the calm. Slowly, Jamie's screams began to subside. His body stopped shaking. His eyes, once wide with panic, began to soften. The room, which had been filled with tension, now felt still, as if time itself had stopped. Thomas Aldrich, who had been desperately trying to calm his son, watched in stunned silence. He had never seen anything like this before. In a matter of moments, Cassandra had done what he couldn't do in hours. She had brought peace. It was as though the simple act of caring, of being present, had worked magic. As Jamie's breathing returned to normal, Thomas looked at Cassandra, his face a mixture of gratitude and astonishment. He had always believed that money could solve any problem, that power could control any situation. But that night, he learned that some things money couldn't buy, and some things power couldn't fix. The waitress, the one he had barely noticed before, had just taught him the greatest lesson of all. As Cassandra stood up, her eyes met Thomas Aldrich's. His gaze was not filled with the usual judgment or dismissal that she had learned to endure from the wealthy over the years. Instead, there was something raw in his expression, something akin to gratitude mixed with awe. It was a look she had never expected to receive from someone of his status. He had witnessed her calm his son in a way that no amount of money or status could have. The power of a simple act of kindness had shifted the room, the energy, and perhaps Thomas himself. He cleared his throat, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of emotion. "Thank you," he said softly. "I don't know how you did it, but I've never seen him calm down like that." Cassandra nodded, not saying anything in return, but a small smile played at the corners of her lips. She didn't need recognition. She didn't need applause. She was used to the quiet, unnoticed work of those in her position. But tonight, something had felt different. For a brief moment, she was seen, not for her uniform or her role in the background, but for her heart. As she moved away from the table, she could feel the eyes of the other guests following her. They were no longer filled with the usual dismissive glances. There was curiosity now, perhaps even a little respect. But she couldn't allow herself to get lost in that feeling. She had a job to do. She walked back to the kitchen, her mind racing with thoughts she hadn't allowed herself to think in a long time. Why had she helped Thomas's son like that? She had always been told to keep her head down, to do her job, and nothing more. It was easier that way. But something about Jamie's distress had triggered something in her. She couldn't walk away from it. Cassandra grabbed a clean tray from the counter, preparing to serve drinks to a nearby table, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Thomas. What would happen now? She had never spoken to him before, and in truth, she hadn't expected him to ever take notice of her. But now, she had caught his attention, and that was both unsettling and thrilling at the same time. She couldn't help but wonder if this moment would change anything. Would he see her differently? Would he remember this night? As she served the next table, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, expecting a message from her daughter, but instead, the screen showed an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. Hello. There was a brief pause before a voice on the other end spoke. This is Thomas Aldrich. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I wanted to personally thank you again for what you did for my son tonight. Cassandra's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Aldrich, she said, her voice unsure. It was no problem at all. I was just doing my job. No, he replied, his voice firm. You did more than your job. You gave my son something that I couldn't. Calm. Peace. I need to know how you did that. Cassandra felt her throat tighten. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. It's not really something I can explain, she said, her voice quieter now. I just knew what to do. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Thomas spoke again. I'd like to talk to you. There's something I think you can help me with. Cassandra's heart raced. Was this a joke? Was he serious? What do you mean? I'm hosting a charity event in a few weeks, Thomas continued. And I need someone who understands children like my son. I need someone who can help with an initiative we're launching. You've got a gift, Cassandra, and I think it could be invaluable to what we're trying to do. I want you to be a part of it. Cassandra was stunned. Her mind was spinning. How could this be happening? I don't think I'm the right person, she said, shaking her head as if he could see her. I'm just a waitress. I don't have the qualifications you're looking for. You have something more valuable than any degree or certification, Thomas said firmly. You have understanding. You have heart. I can't teach that. Cassandra swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. She had always been content in the background, doing the work no one else saw. But now, she was being invited into a world she had never imagined for herself. I'll think about it, she said quietly, still trying to process everything. Good, Thomas replied. I'll send you the details. And I'll be expecting you to be there. The call ended, leaving Cassandra standing alone in the kitchen, her phone still pressed to her ear. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She had been offered an opportunity, a chance to leave the life she had known behind and step into something bigger. But was she ready for it? Could she really step into a world of wealth and power without losing herself in the process? As she stared out of the small kitchen window, the rain had stopped, but the uncertainty remained. This was just the beginning. What would happen next was up to her. I don't think I'm the right person for this, Cassandra said softly, the words escaping her mouth almost against her will. She wasn't used to being thrust into the spotlight. All she had ever known was the hum of the kitchen, the quiet clink of silverware, the soft murmur of restaurant patrons, and the occasional, dismissive glance from people like Thomas Aldrich. But here she was, holding the phone, her life about to change in a way she hadn't prepared for. The invitation to help with his charity event, to be part of something bigger than herself, sat like a weight on her chest. She wasn't ready. At least, that's what she thought. Thomas's voice cut through her thoughts, calm but firm. I know it's a big ask, Cassandra, but I'm not asking you to be anyone other than yourself. This isn't about qualifications or experience. It's about heart. You've already shown me that you have more than enough. His words hung in the air, warm and reassuring, but also full of expectation. She had always been someone who kept her head down. She did her job well, but never asked for more. But this was different. She was being asked to step out of her comfort zone, to take on something she had never considered. The weight of the decision was heavy, but as she looked around her small apartment, her daughter's laughter echoing through the rooms, she knew this might be the opportunity she had always dreamed of. A chance to make a difference, not just for herself, but for others like her, the ones who had been overlooked, underestimated, and forgotten. Cassandra took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she gripped the phone. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "I'll help." The line went silent for a moment, and then Thomas's voice came through, soft with gratitude. "Thank you, Cassandra. You won't regret this." When she hung up, the weight didn't lift. If anything, it grew heavier. But this time, it felt different. It felt like a responsibility, like something she had to do, not just for herself, but for the others who had been pushed aside their whole lives. She spent the rest of the evening reflecting on the decision, her thoughts racing. What would it mean to be a part of Thomas's world? To step into a room full of power and privilege? Could she really do it? Could she belong? The next day, she received an email with the details for the charity event. The description of the initiative was both humbling and overwhelming. It was about children with disabilities, about providing support to families who struggled, just like Thomas had been struggling with his son. Cassandra had no formal training in therapy or care for children with autism, but she knew the language of compassion. She knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be dismissed. She knew how to listen, how to understand, how to show up when no one else would. And that, she realized, was exactly what they needed. She spent the next few days preparing, gathering what little she had in terms of knowledge and resources. She spoke to a few friends, asking questions, doing research online, and trying to absorb as much as she could about the work that was ahead. But it wasn't the facts and figures that made her ready. It was the understanding, the compassion, the ability to be present, to show up for people who needed it most. On the day of the event, Cassandra walked into the venue, her heart racing. She had never seen a space like this before, grand, elegant, and full of people who had the power to change lives with a single decision. As she stepped into the room, she could feel the eyes on her. Some were curious, others dismissive. She was just a waitress, after all. But today, she wasn't just a waitress. Today, she was there for something bigger than herself. The event started, and Cassandra was introduced to the other guests, many of whom were in similar positions of power as Thomas. They were influential figures, investors, philanthropists, people who had built their empires on business, not empathy. But as the evening went on, Cassandra found herself connecting with people in ways she hadn't expected. She spoke with families who had children with special needs, with individuals who understood the struggles that came with raising a child with autism. They didn't see her as a server. They saw her as someone who understood their pain, their joy, and their dreams. When Thomas came over to speak with her, he was different from the man she had met in the restaurant. He was softer, more vulnerable. He had seen the difference she had made for his son, and now he was trusting her with something much bigger, the future of his initiative. "I know I asked a lot from you, Cassandra," he said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "But you've proven to me that sometimes, the people who understand the most aren't the ones with the degrees or the fancy titles. They're the ones who've lived through the struggles. They're the ones who've walked the path and seen it from the other side." Cassandra felt a lump form in her throat. She had always been told that her background, her history, made her less than. But here, in this room full of people who had everything, it was her experiences that made her invaluable. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she truly belonged. I had always imagined that things like this were reserved for other people, the ones with connections, the ones with money. But as I walked into the elegant ballroom, surrounded by polished marble floors, gleaming chandeliers, and the soft hum of quiet conversation, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't just an observer. I was part of this world, a world I had once believed was unreachable. The charity event was in full swing, and despite the grandeur, there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. Thomas Aldridge was nowhere to be seen, but his presence was still felt. He had tasked me with making sure the evening went smoothly, to ensure that the families benefiting from the initiative felt seen and heard. It was a responsibility that weighed heavily on me. I had always been the one on the sidelines, the one who helped others but never asked for help in return. But now, I had been entrusted with something much bigger than just serving drinks or clearing tables. I was helping to shape the future for children like Thomas's son, for families who understood what it was like to fight every day for a better life. The guests were a mixture of the wealthy, the influential, and the hopeful. There were a few familiar faces from the restaurant industry, but the majority were new to me. They were businessmen, philanthropists, doctors, and parents, all gathered together for a cause that was greater than any of us. I watched as they mingled, chatting and laughing, all while the families from the initiative were quietly ushered into a separate room where they could share their stories, their challenges, and their hopes for the future. I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. These families were not just there as guests. They were the heart of the event, the reason we had all gathered in the first place. As the evening wore on, I found myself in a corner of the room, watching the interactions between the guests. Some were kind, genuinely interested in the lives of those less fortunate. But others were more interested in the appearance of kindness, the image of charity without ever really understanding what it meant. It wasn't lost on me that many of these people had power and influence, but lacked the empathy that came from experience. That's where I came in. I wasn't just a waitress anymore. I was someone who understood, someone who had lived through the struggles and could see past the polished veneers. I walked through the crowd, making small talk with the families, offering them comfort, answering their questions, and doing my best to make them feel like they belonged. It was during one of these conversations that I met Sarah, a single mother of a young boy named Lucas who had autism. She was quiet at first, unsure of how to talk to someone like me, someone who had never experienced her struggles. But as the conversation continued, she opened up, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "I just want him to have a chance," she said softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "He deserves a future where he's seen, where people don't look past him just because he's different." Her words hit me hard, harder than I had expected. I had heard similar stories before, but something about Sarah's voice, the rawness of her emotion, made it all feel real in a way it hadn't before. I didn't know what to say at first. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that her son would have a bright future. But I didn't know that for sure. What I did know was that in that moment, I had a chance to do something meaningful, something real. I placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what little comfort I could. "He will be seen," I said softly. "He will have a future, and you're not alone in this." She nodded, a small smile breaking through the tears. As the evening continued, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. Just a few weeks ago, I had been working 2 jobs, struggling to make ends meet, and here I was, part of something much bigger than myself. It wasn't just about the money or the charity event. It was about the impact we could have on real lives, on real families. When the evening finally came to a close, Thomas found me in the crowd. He walked up to me, his expression serious but filled with gratitude. "You did more than I could have ever hoped for tonight," he said quietly. "You've shown me that it's not just about giving money. It's about giving people the opportunity to be seen, to be heard." I felt a warmth spread through me as I looked into his eyes. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice filled with emotion. "But it's not just me. It's all of us. We're all in this together." He smiled, nodding in agreement. "I've learned that tonight," he said, "and I'll never forget it." As he walked away, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had made the right choice. I wasn't just a waitress anymore. I was part of something bigger, something that had the power to change lives. And that was enough for me. I woke up the next morning with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. The events of the night before still echoed in my mind, but now they were settling into something that felt real, something that I couldn't ignore anymore. For the first time, I saw the weight of my decisions, the depth of my impact. I wasn't just part of a charity event. I wasn't just a waitress in a glamorous setting. I was a catalyst for change. The rain had stopped, the air was cooler, and the sky had a soft, washed-out glow. I sat by the window, sipping my coffee, watching the city come to life, and for the first time in a while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, and that feeling was both exhilarating and terrifying. Thomas's words lingered with me. It's not just about giving money. It's about giving people the opportunity to be seen, to be heard. He had given me that opportunity, but now, the question loomed. What was I going to do with it? I could have walked away, gone back to the life I knew. It would have been easier, safer. But deep down, I knew that I couldn't. Not anymore. I had made a promise to myself and to the families I had met, to be a voice, to advocate for those who had been overlooked, dismissed, and forgotten. That wasn't a responsibility I could just walk away from. The phone rang, breaking my thoughts. I looked at the screen. It was Thomas. I hadn't expected to hear from him so soon, but somehow, I wasn't surprised. I answered quickly. "Cassandra, I hope I'm not interrupting." His voice came through, calm as ever. "Not at all," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "I just wanted to follow up on yesterday's event. You were amazing. Truly. I've already seen a huge impact, and I want to keep that momentum going." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had only done what felt natural. I hadn't expected praise, but hearing it from him felt different. "I'm glad it helped," I replied softly. "But I'm just one person. There's so much more to be done." "Exactly," he agreed. "And that's why I'm calling. I want to offer you a full-time position with our initiative. We need someone who understands the families we're helping, someone who can speak to their needs in a way no one else can. You've shown me that you have that, Cassandra. Will you join us?" His words hung in the air, a proposition I hadn't anticipated. A full-time position. To be part of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. It was an opportunity, one that could change my life and the lives of others. I had always worked hard, always done what was necessary to survive. But now, I had the chance to thrive. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. "You don't have to answer right away," he said. "Take your time. But I want you to know that the offer is there. We believe in what you can do, Cassandra. We want you to be part of this." I could feel my hands trembling as I held the phone. I wasn't used to being given such an opportunity. I had always worked behind the scenes, never at the forefront. But now, I had a chance to change that. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice a little shaky but resolute. "I need some time to process this." "Of course," Thomas said warmly. "Take all the time you need. But know that I'm here if you have any questions." We hung up, and for a moment, I just sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear. The decision felt enormous, heavier than anything I had faced before. But there was something in me that knew this was the right step. I had already made a difference. Now, I had the chance to do it on a larger scale, to help more people, to be part of something that could truly change the world for families like mine. The day passed in a blur. I talked to my daughter, made plans for the week ahead, and let the thoughts swirl in my head. It was a big decision, but I knew I couldn't let fear stop me. Fear had been the thing that kept me hidden, kept me quiet. Fear had kept me in the background. But now, it was time for me to step forward, to be seen, and to make sure others were seen, too. That night, I went to bed with a sense of purpose, knowing that tomorrow I would take the first step towards something new, something better. And no matter what, I knew that the journey ahead was one I was ready for. I woke up to a quiet morning, the soft light of the sun creeping through the curtains. My phone buzzed with a new notification, but for some reason, I didn't check it right away. I had already made my decision. I had made a commitment to myself, and now, it was time to honor it. I had agreed to join Thomas's initiative, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. What did this new chapter hold for me? Would I be able to handle the expectations, the responsibility? Or would I fail, like I had feared so many times before? The self-doubt crept in, but I pushed it away. Today was about moving forward, not looking back. I grabbed my phone and saw a message from Thomas. "Looking forward to meeting you today. We'll talk about the next steps and how you can be a part of the team." I smiled at the words. There was no turning back now. I had already agreed, and now it was time to show up. I got dressed, checked on my daughter, and left the house, feeling a sense of purpose in every step. As I made my way to the office, I thought about the families I had met at the charity event. They had trusted me, shared their stories with me, and now it was my turn to do something meaningful with that trust. I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing it for them, for the children who needed a voice, for the parents who had been overlooked, just like I had been. The office was sleek and modern, a far cry from the cramped spaces I had grown used to. As I walked through the doors, I was greeted by Thomas and a few other team members. They all smiled at me, and I couldn't help but feel a little out of place. I had always been in the background, never the one to stand in the spotlight. But today, everything was different. "Cassandra, welcome," Thomas said, extending his hand. "We're so glad to have you on board. You're going to do great things here." His words were reassuring, but there was still a part of me that questioned whether I was truly capable of living up to the expectations. But as we walked through the office, discussing the goals of the initiative, the families we were working with, and the impact we could make, the doubts slowly started to fade. This was where I was meant to be. I was meant to help, to make a difference, and that's exactly what I was going to do. Later that day, I sat down with Thomas and the rest of the team. We discussed the next steps for the initiative, the outreach programs, the support systems we could build for children with autism and their families. There was a lot to do, and I felt a surge of determination. This was more than just a job. It was a calling. I knew that my role was going to evolve over time. I wasn't just going to be another employee. I was going to be a part of something bigger, something that could change lives. The weight of that responsibility was not lost on me. In fact, it motivated me even more. As the meeting wrapped up, Thomas turned to me with a thoughtful look in his eyes. "Cassandra," he began, "I've seen the way you interact with people, the way you connect. You've already made a difference. But I think there's something bigger for you here. I'd like to offer you a leadership role within the initiative." His words hit me like a wave. A leadership role? Me? The same woman who had been overlooked and dismissed for so long? I had never imagined I would be given an opportunity like this. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, I've never done anything like this before. I don't know if I'm ready." Thomas smiled. "I know you're ready. And I believe in you. You have something rare, Cassandra. You understand people, their struggles, their hearts. That's what this initiative needs." I sat there for a moment, taking in his words. Could I really do this? Could I step up and take on this leadership role? But as I looked around the room, at the team that had already trusted me, at the families who had put their faith in me, I knew that this was my chance. I had always been afraid of stepping up, of failing. But now, I realized that the only way to succeed was to take the leap. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady now. "I'll take the role. I'm ready." The look of pride in Thomas's eyes made my heart swell. "I knew you would," he said. "You're going to do amazing things, Cassandra." And in that moment, I knew that this was just the beginning. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was mine to walk. And I was ready for whatever came next. I walked into the office that morning with a new sense of purpose. I had accepted the leadership role with the initiative, but the weight of the decision was heavier than I expected. It wasn't just about managing projects or overseeing operations. It was about representing those families, those children, and making sure their voices were heard. My responsibility had grown in ways I hadn't anticipated, and I could already feel the challenges ahead. But this was where I needed to be. I was ready. As I sat down at my new desk, I took a deep breath, feeling the nerves twist in my stomach. I hadn't been given the title to simply sit in a comfortable office. I had been entrusted with a mission, and that meant everything. I was determined to make a real difference. The phone rang, breaking my thoughts. It was Thomas. "Cassandra," he said, his voice full of energy. "I wanted to check in and see how you're settling in. We have a lot to do, and I know you're the person who can lead the charge. How are you feeling?" I smiled as I answered. "I'm feeling good, excited actually. It's a big step, but I'm ready." "Good," he said. "I've been thinking about how we can elevate this initiative even further. I've got an idea, and I want you to take the lead on it. We're going to host a fundraiser. Something that not only raises money, but also raises awareness for the cause. We need to make sure people understand the challenges families face and why they need support." The excitement in his voice was contagious, but I could also feel the weight of the task ahead. "That sounds incredible," I said. "But where do we begin?" "I trust you to pull it all together," Thomas replied. "You've got the vision, and you know what matters. The team will support you, but you're the one who will make this happen." He hung up, and I sat there for a moment, letting the enormity of the responsibility sink in. I wasn't just managing a small project. I was taking on something that could change lives. I couldn't afford to fail. As the weeks passed, I dove headfirst into planning the fundraiser. I met with local businesses, reaching out to them for donations and support. I worked with our outreach team to ensure that the families we worked with had a voice in the event. It wasn't just about showcasing the initiative. It was about humanizing the cause, showing the faces of those who needed help. Slowly, the event began to take shape. But as the date drew closer, I started to feel the pressure. There were so many moving parts. The venue, the guest list, the promotional material. Every detail mattered. I found myself working late into the night, making sure everything was perfect. It was exhausting, but I knew it was necessary. I had to get this right. The day of the fundraiser arrived, and I stood in front of the venue, feeling a wave of nerves wash over me. This was it. Everything we had worked for, was about to unfold. Guests began to arrive, walking past the red carpet, glancing at the displays that highlighted the children and families our initiative supported. There was a palpable energy in the air, a sense of anticipation. The ballroom was beautiful, the lights dimmed just enough to create an intimate atmosphere. The auction was set up at the back, with items generously donated by local businesses and individuals who believed in the cause. But the real magic of the evening came when the families took the stage. One by one, they shared their stories, of struggles, of triumphs, of love, and of hope. Their voices cracked with emotion, but they stood tall, proud to be a part of something that could change their lives. As they spoke, I felt a lump form in my throat. These weren't just stories. These were real people, real families who had fought to be seen. And now, they were being seen. It was an emotional moment, and the room was completely silent. But then, something shifted. The audience, many of whom had come to the event not fully understanding the depth of the cause, began to applaud. Slowly at first, but then louder, more genuine. The applause grew until it filled the room, and in that moment, I realized that we had done something important. We had given these families the recognition they deserved, and we had created a space where they could share their journey. I looked over at Thomas, who was watching the moment unfold with pride in his eyes. He had believed in me from the start, and now, I could see the impact we were making. It was more than just raising money. It was about raising awareness and giving these families the dignity and respect they deserved. The night continued with laughter, conversation, and even a few tears, but I could feel the shift in the room. People were no longer just guests at a fundraiser. They were allies, and they were committed to making a difference. As the event came to a close, Thomas approached me with a smile. "You did it, Cassandra. You really did it." I smiled back, feeling a mix of relief and pride. It wasn't just me, though. It was all of us, the team, the families, the supporters. Together, we had created something that would last far beyond this night. We had started a movement. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I walked into the office the following morning with a quiet sense of accomplishment, but also a heavy realization that the work ahead of me wasn't going to be easy. The fundraiser had been a huge success, but I knew it was only the beginning. I had made promises to the families, to the children whose lives we were trying to change, and now it was time to fulfill them. The excitement from the event was still fresh in my mind, but so was the pressure. I had seen what our initiative could do, but I also knew that sustaining that momentum was going to be the real challenge. As I sat at my desk, staring at the schedule for the next few months, I felt a sense of both excitement and anxiety. There was so much to do. I had been given a platform, and now I had to use it to help those who needed it most. I knew I couldn't do it alone, though. I needed to build a team that was just as dedicated to this mission as I was. I needed people who believed in the cause, who were willing to go the extra mile, and who understood the importance of what we were trying to accomplish. The first step was reaching out to a few key people I knew I could trust. I needed to bring them into the fold. I called up a few colleagues from my past work and explained the vision for the initiative. To my surprise, they were all in. They understood the importance of what we were doing, and they were ready to help. As the days went by, we began to build a small but passionate team. We brainstormed ideas for community outreach programs, workshops, and resources that could make a real impact on the families we were serving. But it wasn't just about the logistics or the programs we were offering. It was about the relationships we were building. We had to make sure these families felt seen, heard, and respected. Our goal was not just to provide assistance, but to empower them to take control of their own lives and to create a lasting change. One of the first projects we decided to tackle was creating a mentorship program for children with autism. We wanted to connect these kids with role models who had overcome similar challenges, who could provide guidance, and who could show them that anything was possible. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a step in the right direction. As the mentorship program took shape, we started to see real change. Kids who had once struggled to communicate, who had been isolated and misunderstood, were starting to thrive. The mentors were a mix of volunteers from all walks of life, teachers, therapists, business professionals, and even some of the families we had been working with. It was a beautiful thing to watch. The kids grew more confident, and the mentors grew more invested. There was a mutual respect that developed between them, and it was clear that the program was having a profound impact. But it wasn't just the children who were benefiting. The mentors were learning as much, if not more, than the kids. They were gaining a deeper understanding of autism, of the challenges these families faced, and of the resilience that had kept them going. It was a reminder that this initiative wasn't just about giving back. It was about creating a shared experience, a community where we could all learn from each other. As the months passed, our team grew stronger, and so did our impact. We expanded the mentorship program, launched new initiatives, and built stronger relationships with the families we were serving. But with every success came a new challenge. There were days when the weight of it all felt overwhelming. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I questioned whether I was truly equipped for this role. But every time I faced those doubts, I reminded myself why I was here. I was here for the families. I was here for the children who needed a chance, for the parents who were doing everything they could to support their kids, and for the community that had shown me that together, we could make a difference. One evening, as I was wrapping up work at the office, Thomas stopped by to check in. He looked at me with a kind smile, one that held both admiration and understanding. "You've come a long way, Cassandra," he said. "I knew from the moment we met that you had something special. But now, seeing everything you've done with this initiative, it's incredible." I smiled, feeling a warm flush of pride. "It's not just me," I said, shaking my head. "It's the team, the families. It's all of us working together." He nodded. "Exactly. But you've led us here, Cassandra. You've given us direction, purpose, and heart. You've made this something real." His words stayed with me long after he left. I knew there was still so much work to be done, but in that moment, I realized how far we had come. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had found my place. This was just the beginning, but we were on the right path. I wasn't just part of a cause anymore. I was a leader, and I was going to keep moving forward, no matter what challenges lay ahead. I stood in front of the office window, watching the city below come to life as the sun set behind the tall buildings. I had come a long way from the woman who once served drinks in the back of a restaurant, unnoticed and undervalued. Now, I was leading an initiative that was changing lives, not just for children with autism and their families, but for myself as well. It had been a year since I accepted the leadership role, and the progress we had made was beyond anything I had imagined. The mentorship programs had expanded, the outreach efforts were growing, and most importantly, the families we served were seeing tangible changes. Children who had once struggled to communicate were now speaking up, gaining confidence, and building relationships. The parents, who had felt isolated and unsupported, were now part of a community, one that understood their challenges and celebrated their victories. Every day, I saw the difference we were making, and it filled me with a sense of pride I had never known. But with every success came new challenges. Our next goal was to secure long-term funding, something that would ensure the sustainability of the programs. It was a daunting task, one that would require even more outreach, more meetings, and more perseverance. But I was ready for it. I had learned that the real work wasn't just about running programs. It was about building relationships and creating trust, both with the families and with the people who had the power to make a lasting impact. I picked up the phone to make yet another call to a potential donor when I heard a knock on the door. I looked up to see Thomas standing there, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something more urgent. "Cassandra," he said, stepping inside. "We've got something big." He handed me a folder. "This is an opportunity for us to partner with a national organization. If we can secure this partnership, it could change everything for us. It's the chance we've been waiting for." I took the folder, my mind racing as I flipped through the pages. The partnership was exactly what we needed, a major organization that could provide the financial support to expand our programs nationwide. But there was a catch. They wanted us to prove our ability to scale quickly, to show that we had the infrastructure, the team, and the vision to make it work. It was everything we had worked for, but it also felt like the biggest challenge we had ever faced. "This is it," I said, looking up at Thomas. "We've been building toward this. We can do this." He nodded, his eyes reflecting the same determination. "We've built something incredible here, Cassandra. Now it's time to show the world what we can do." The pressure was intense, but I had never felt more alive. We had the momentum, the vision, and the heart to make it work. We had already proven that we could make a difference on a small scale. Now, it was time to take it to the next level. Over the next few weeks, we worked tirelessly. The team came together like never before, each person contributing their expertise, their passion, and their dedication. We refined our plans, built stronger systems, and created the framework to expand. Every detail mattered. Every meeting, every conversation, every decision had to align with our mission and our vision. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when I wondered if we were in over our heads. But we pushed through. And when the day finally came to present our proposal, I stood before the board of the national organization, feeling the weight of the moment. But I also felt something else, a quiet confidence. I knew what we had built. I knew the lives we had already changed. And I knew that we were ready for the next step. The meeting went smoothly, and when we finished, there was a silence that hung in the air. I held my breath, waiting for their response. Finally, the chairman spoke. "We're impressed," he said. "This is exactly what we've been looking for. We'd like to partner with you." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. We had done it. We had secured the partnership that would take our initiative to the next level. The room erupted in applause, but all I could do was smile, my heart swelling with pride. This was the moment we had been working for. We had proven that our work mattered, that we could scale, and that we were capable of making a lasting impact. As the applause died down, I looked around at my team, my colleagues, the families we had worked with, and I knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but we had built something real, something that had already changed lives, and we were going to keep pushing forward. Together, we would make sure that every child, every family, every person who had been overlooked would be seen, heard, and given the opportunity they deserved. And with that, I knew that nothing could stop us. In this powerful and inspiring journey, we explore the life of Cassandra, a woman who rises from being a humble waitress to a leader in a groundbreaking initiative that supports families with autistic children. Through hard work, compassion, and determination, she navigates the challenges of building a community that truly understands the struggles of others. Along the way, she learns valuable lessons about empowerment, leadership, and the importance of being seen and heard. As she steps into a new role, she faces the complexities of leading a team, securing vital partnerships, and making a lasting impact. This story, like many Black stories, reflects the power of resilience and the difference that one person can make in the lives of others. The story highlights the importance of giving a voice to those who have been overlooked, ensuring that every family, every child, every individual receives the support and recognition they deserve. In Cassandra's journey, we see the beauty of Black stories that often go untold, yet carry immense power and depth. As her initiative expands and the lives of countless families change for the better, Cassandra becomes a true example of how one person's actions can ripple out and create meaningful change. This Black story proves that no matter where you come from, you can make a profound difference when you have the right support and a heart full of compassion.